Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming back. We are here today with Kathy Decker, our member of our board. She is the last but not the least of our series, and we are excited to spend this afternoon with you, Kathy. Hello.
Hi, I'm excited to be here.
I'm good. Yeah, this whole process has been very fun and very informative, at least for me.
Yeah.
So
I hope it's the same for everybody else that's going to watch it. So.
Yeah, that's the goal, is just to kind of get to know you guys and just kind of really what it's like to be on the board. And so we're going to jump right into that very first question. And that very first question is just, what motivated you to serve on our board? What was like you had to?
So that's an interesting question. What I will say is the leading up to the had to was that I've always been passionate about education. I knew I wanted to be a school teacher since I was in the 6th grade, which, a lot of people don't have that.
Yes.
Like they know, but I have known since I was 11 that I wanted to be a teacher. And I knew that I wanted to be an elementary school teacher. So, my career path is very crazy, so I won't go into it. But basically, I've taught for almost 30 years now.
Wow,
before
okay.
this, I from everything from 2-year-olds up to 4th grade.
Wow,
so
okay.
I've got a broad, and I've always been interested in the research behind things as well, like especially once you start teaching those little ones, like you're like, whoa, this is crazy.
Yeah.
So knowing that I was always passionate about education, everybody that knew me, or in one way or another, either just personally or because I taught their kids, had always said, you should run for the school board. And I'm like, I'm raising my own kids. I
got things to do.
Right. And as my kids got older, I had been able to take some time off to be a stay-at-home mom.
Okay.
And I started going back to school, back to teaching slowly.
Okay.
And at one point, I had a job in VPS. And there were some things that I had heard, we need to do this, we need to do that.
Yes.
This is
I see.
and I'm like, but being in it, I'm like, wow, we really need to, up the ante, especially on our kids that are of high needs.
And finding support for them.
Finding support.
And for the teachers as well.
Yes, and that was it. Was like, well, our teachers are amazing.
Yeah.
And the teachers know what we need, but they're not being heard, or they're not being listened to.
Yeah.
And nor I felt like some of the parents weren't being listened to, or some of the parents didn't have the understanding of how, some of our parents that either speak a second language.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Are new to the country. And even some of our parents who themselves, they may speak English, they may be, they may have been born and raised here, but their experience in school wasn't terrific, and they were unsuccessful academically, and so they don't want to come. So how do you incorporate all those important opinions and those important insights into making our schools successful for everyone?
Yes. Yeah.
And so I decided I had to resign from VPS in order to run.
You can't work as an employee and then also be on the board.
Right.
Yeah.
So it was a big discussion in our family. Should I run? And so I ran. Little did I know, up until that point, nobody was really interested in running. Most of the people ran either there were just 2 people running, or a lot of times it was unopposed.
Yeah.
But this was the big
This
was a big year, and apparently there were 4 people for each of the 3 different positions. So there were 12 people that signed up to run for the school board. I was like, that's not going to be as easy as it would have been 4 years ago.
You were anticipating the maybe one, or not even having any.
Right. I was like, okay, I'll run. And then it's like,
Yeah, I actually had to do so. Okay, nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's actually very interesting, because what I found out through the other interviews is that we've had Tracy Barrows, and we have Wendy Smith, who are also in education, and I'm going to school at WSUV to be in administration, and we've had the luxury in class to interview some superintendents in our state. And a lot of them are talking about their board members, and they're like, well, because of the fact that they're not in education, I am the one that brings that instructional knowledge. But now hearing that we have 3 out of the 5 are in education
And
currently
have been.
and have been, and you've been there for 30 years, and especially in that pre-K age, that's a tough age. So that is very comforting to know, especially as a teacher myself, knowing that we have the voice of people that know what it's like and have seen the struggle and know that, there are special things that each grade level needs.
Right.
And then being able to speak on that. And then I feel like also I think I asked this question to Wendy. Do you feel like because you've been on the board, it's made your teaching skills go up? Do you feel like that's something that has honestly been something that now if you go back in the classroom, would you be able to do a better job just by seeing what you've seen in our board?
I would say, and so currently I'm a student teacher, a substitute teacher, sorry, not a student teacher, but a substitute teacher.
Uh-huh.
I would say that there are definitely things like, even with 30 years of experience, you don't know everything,
Yeah,
right? And you don't even know most, or maybe even half. I mean, and also dynamics of families are changing
yes.
a lot, and dynamics of communities, and so there's always so much to learn. And so when we're in the board meetings, not our general board meetings so much, because those are already things that we've talked about, and it's the business meeting.
Yeah, and you got to follow that agenda to keep on time.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Although the community comments sometimes are very enlightening.
Yeah.
But in our study sessions, when different groups are presenting from the district office to learn about something that's come up or be aware of something, and what I found is as soon as I've made aware of something, then I start like researching and looking into like, oh, wait a minute,
what is this?
The literature wars, okay, literacy wars, what's going on. And so that has really been wonderful. And I've seen what's interesting too for me is also to bring what I see when I'm going into different school districts as a substitute teacher, some of the things that are happening, and bring that back to the board and say, hey, because we all have our like locked in perspective.
Yep.
And I miss having a classroom of my own. I'm also enjoying being out and seeing how other teachers and other school districts and other buildings handle certain situations.
And that is, right. This is my first year I've stepped out of the classroom. Me and my wife had a baby, and so I took
congratulations.
I took that opportunity to say I wanted to be a part-time employee. Because of that, I can't be in the classroom, so they put me as a dual language coach. And I miss the classroom terribly. I'm like, oh my gosh, but I have felt that same thing by going into other classrooms and seeing how other teachers do it. You realize that, I do it this way, but it's not the only way. And actually that way looks way better, and the kids love that better. So I'm going to now do that. And so, that's kind of what I feel when you have the ability to go and see things. You then understand, and then having to really research your work, because of the idea that you're making decisions for our district that are for all people, all kids. And so then, you should probably broaden your horizons and see what's out there and what decisions you can make to help.
Well, and it's interesting how some of the things that we feel just must be the right thing to do in a classroom, right? We've got this knee-jerk reaction, this is how it should be done. And then when you actually look at some of the research, you're like, well, that's not... I mean, a perfect example is, again, the turn we're taking back in literacy. Like for the last 25 years, it's been what they call the queuing method, and which everybody thought was based on research. Even, I mean, I'll say that's when I was in, that's when I was first teaching first and third grade. That was like,
look
it
at
was
the
just
pictures.
coming.
What's the letter start with?
And I'm like, oh, okay,
that
this
works.
seems, and they're loving it, but to find out that there was really no research behind it. And so what I've learned from that is just because everybody's jumping on board doesn't make it so. And it also makes me wish that we had more educators at the policy making areas in the states and in the federal government, because a lot of funding went, a lot of federal funding and state funding went to the queuing method.
Yep, the queuing method, and then and then even the people that were pushing those curriculums, you're thinking, oh, and they're being asked, like, is this research? And they're like, yeah.
That's what I said.
Mind your own business, like, and so there's people just needing to be there that know the role as a teacher to ask those questions. That's important,
right? And so, and that's what I find myself doing, much to sometimes the chagrin of the district office, is I'm asking a lot of questions.
Yes.
And it's not through any, like, we have an amazing district office.
Yes. Yeah.
It's that I want to make sure that I'm not making that mistake that I made 25 years ago.
Yep.
With, like, saying, oh, okay, this you're telling me that this is research based, and actually the only research that's been done is by the publishers of the curriculum.
Yeah.
And so, and I love what we're doing now too, in that we're looking at somewhat developing our own curriculum through the PLCs and the UDL. The PLCs, for anybody that's not, into the education
world, yes, the jargon.
The professional learning communities,
yes.
Which are groups of teachers that work together to look at the data and decide what these kids need and how do we serve that.
Yeah.
And then the UDL is Universal Design for Learning, which is another way of changing how you teach to make sure that everyone gets what they need.
They're offering more of what seems like a menu for kids to be able to display their learning and that what they've mastered. So rather than say, this is the only way that I'm going, this is the test and this is what it looks like, you can have projects, you can have things. So a UDL is a fantastic way, especially for our multilingual learners and kids that think differently differently than others. And so that's just giving them the option to show.
Right. And what is coming down the pike as anybody that's worked in the classrooms for any amount of time, is we've got a lot of kids that think in a different way.
And we're starting to realize, like,
okay.
Once school's been hard for this student because
it's the concept of once you're made aware of something, you start looking for it, and you're like, wait a minute.
Yes.
I mean, I was, I'm, like I said, been doing this a long time, and back at the beginning when we were first acknowledging the autism spectrum disorder. And at the time, we didn't even call it a spectrum disorder. We just said autism. This child has autism. We've learned so much, but we've also learned that some of the kids that went before that seemed a little different and maybe annoyed us. So, why aren't you paying attention, or why are you only focusing on that? What are you... probably needed that kind of support. And so it's the more we learn, the better we get at servicing our kids.
And that's the goal, right?
Right. And that's why I ask so many questions.
Yeah. Well, that's the case, is that if you know better, you do better, right? And that's how do you know better without asking questions?
Right, exactly.
So then our next question that we are kind of wanting to know is, can you take us into your day-to-day as a board and a board member, and then kind of just tell us what are your duties? What are you responsible for? What kind of things do you work on? I know that we see you in meetings, but there's a lot that goes behind the scenes that is unseen. So can you kind of peel back that curtain and let us know what it looks like?
So a lot of our job, besides the meetings, is interacting with the superintendent and reading. We do a lot of reading, keeping our eyes on what's going on in the community and being aware of what's happening. And then if there are things that are becoming really amazing things that are happening or things that we need to help support, being able to work with whoever's needing the support or whoever's through this district office. Our job is not to go into a classroom and help a teacher, although I would love to do that, but that's not my job. Our job is to look at the district as a whole and get a sense of what's going on, and then as a board, maybe we need to develop a new policy. The equity policy was the big one, but there are other policies that show up, like we've determined, that we need to look at, as we were talking about the reading curriculum, we need to look at our curriculum policy. Like, how do we make sure that we are supporting kids in the way that research based and shows that.
Research sound and being able to back it up.
Yes, and also take into account our many cultures that we now are lucky to have in this community, which has changed dramatically even in just the short time that 20 years that I've lived here. It's changed.
Yeah.
It's very different from the community I originally came from, which was incredibly diverse, but it's getting better. We're having more diverse. So we need to make sure, so that's an example of, I'm not going to go in and choose curriculum.
Yes.
We have a curriculum person to do that.
Yeah.
But I may suggest that, we need to look at this policy because it needs a little fleshing out to make sure that we don't fall into these
back into
traps,
our old habits and things that we've learned better now. And so, well, and that conversation of you saying where you came from kind of leads into our next question of asking, what is your connection to Vancouver? How long have you lived in our community? And if you want to let us know, where are you from originally?
All right, so I'm originally from Northern Virginia, I always say Washington, D.C. area. And I grew up because it's the Washington, D.C. area, I grew up, and actually my first couple of years of teaching taught in one of the most diverse areas in the country.
Oh, yeah. It's been fun.
It was so much fun. And I did,
but in a fun way, I feel.
Yeah, but also it was fun because I grew up in that community. I didn't appreciate, I just took it for granted.
Yeah.
Right? And as a matter of fact, now this is a long time ago, a very long time ago, because I'm older. But my high school made it to the front cover of National Geographic one month because it was considered the most diverse high school in the country. And not like that we had more African American or we had more age. It was because we had such a blend.
Yeah. Just many cultures.
So many cultures. Yeah. It was, and this is very very simplifying it, but basically it was like a third Caucasian, a third African American, and a third English language learners. And among those English language learners, we had such a big variation, especially in the 80s.
Yeah.
In the late 70s, early 80s.
Yeah.
But what brought me out here, and I love calling Vancouver our home, we talk about it all the time. It's like we are just so blessed to have landed where we landed in the Pacific Northwest. My now husband went to business school at UW.
Oh, okay.
So when he got a job, business schools are very regional, so he got a job in Corvallis, Oregon.
Oh, okay.
And then we were there for a while, and then the company that he was working for, he took a job up here in Vancouver, and so then we moved up to Vancouver, and that is exactly the time that we were just having our first child.
Okay.
So we have lived here for 27, maybe 28 years. I always, those years kind of.
But you just probably keep track of how old your child is, and that way you're able to say, okay, we're celebrating the 30th year here coming on up.
Exactly.
Awesome. So I'm from Independence, Oregon.
Oh, okay.
So
not very far from
Oregon. Literally 30 minutes.
Yeah, I drove through there all the time.
Yes, in Monmouth, you probably drove right down 99.
Yes, exactly.
You blink and you miss it. That's what I called home. So I'm definitely glad to be in Vancouver as well.
Yeah.
So our next question on here is, what is your favorite thing to do here in Vancouver?
My favorite thing to do here in Vancouver has to be the farmers market.
Oh, yes.
People go, have you ever been? I'm like, I go every week.
Yeah, and it's bigger and bigger I feel like every week I feel you go and there's more and more and more.
I just have to tell you, 27 years ago, it was underneath the I-5 bridge.
Okay.
And that area over there, because the city of Vancouver is just transformed so fast into such a beautiful city. But that area where it used to be underneath the I-5 bridge was basically nothing but dive bars and pawn shops. It's like, I don't really feel like I'm going to a farmer's market as I'm walking down. But now it's just so gorgeous, and people come in from all over the Pacific Northwest to go to our farmer's market.
Yeah, and I was actually talking to who was it? I want to say maybe it was Tracy Barrows. I've been talking to her about the idea that before you used to go into Portland for a night out. Now people are coming from Portland to come to Vancouver for a night out. So it is transformed and it is looking fantastic. That waterfront is just like,
I
it's so
know.
beautiful. And just, I take my family from out of state. I've taken them. And that's where,
Yeah,
one of the
we take-
places, one of the stops now.
What's
is like
fun is
Multnomah Falls, waterfront.
What's fun is having when my family comes out, because they, since they live so far
Mm-hmm.
away, they come out maybe once a year, maybe twice if we're lucky, for them to like see the transformation from year to year. It's like, wow. I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, I know. I mean,
Well,
I remember when
last year?
Esther Short Park was a dump, and
Yeah.
now it's like,
now it's this beautiful park with like the
yes.
stage, and I'll always in the summertime I feel like there's always something going on down there.
yeah,
So
it's just
fantastic.
amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And so going to the farmers market, what else do you like to do on your free time?
On my free time, I love to garden
Okay.
when it's not raining constantly.
Yes. Hopefully May comes in.
Right.
A little more sun.
Although I have to say that when I say gardening, it's all about like fruits and vegetables.
Oh, okay.
And I say that if you give me something that is supposed to grow a flower, and that flower is supposed to die and grow something
A
else,
fruit or something?
I'm good. But if you give me a plant that is only supposed to grow a flower and it's not supposed to die,
Not
I'm
for me.
locked.
Not for me.
It doesn't work.
Nice. Yeah. My dad is obsessed with his garden as well, and I feel my backyard that I used to use as a nice little, playground. I had my trampoline, I had like a little soccer area. Now it's just pure garden.
Right.
And every year he takes over more and more, and somehow he comes to me and he's like, "Oh, I planted my onions," and I say, "Okay, yeah, that's how many did you plant?" And you're thinking it's for him and my mom. You got
Right.
maybe
Yeah,
2 dozen. He's like, 400.
Oh
And
my
I'm like,
gosh!
Yeah, and we don't have like property, but my dad has my whole backyard is just onions. Like, there's 50 in each row, and I'm like, all right. So what are you gonna do with 400 onions, Dad?
So
I'm
I
like,
guess
"Oh,
my
yeah."
husband shouldn't be complaining about the fact that instead of just planting 4 tomato plants, I plant 9.
Yes,
right?
he should not
No,
complain about that.
no,
My
no,
dad
okay.
has a jungle, and if
Yeah.
you ever need any
I'll just let
other
him know.
produce,
Yeah.
he's obsessed with chili peppers. So you we'll
Yeah,
chat.
yeah,
We'll chat.
definitely, because I can't grow chili peppers.
Oh well, then you have found your match.
Okay, awesome.
So I kind of want to know from you. It sounds like the equity policy has always been in like a highlight of most of our board members. What is another time that you can say has
Other than
been-
the equity policy?
has been
Oh,
like
man.
the best? Well, it could be either finding like what we did with the equity policy, or it could be something that you've experienced as a board member. But what has been the best moment for you to say this will go down as a good memory for me too?
I would have to say, doing our superintendent interviews and not only being able to, but intentionally making sure that our community was thoroughly
Yes.
involved in those interviews, and then settling on Dr. Snell.
Yeah.
And it wasn't settling; it was like,
Yeah.
and knowing that the entire community felt the same.
Yeah.
Right? We didn't just have a few people talk to him. And it was funny because the group that we were using, because whenever you do a superintendent search, there are people that know how to do it. So
Yes.
you hire those people. They said, "Oh, so we've got these community forums set up, and it's during COVID. So it's
Yeah.
really," and we'd always go, "We need a few more." And they're like, "You already do more than everybody." We need a few more because we need this community and this
Yeah.
community and this community that we're not touching on.
Yeah.
And I love that we were able to select somebody who's so passionate about education,
Yeah.
but who everybody else in the community realized was the right choice.
right choice,
So
for
when
sure.
we brought our new superintendent in, everybody was on board.
Yeah.
The teachers, everybody. And also being able to take that experience and continue it when we were doing the equity policy, community. Now we're
Yes.
doing the strategic plan. And again, it's like, what community member, as we look at what we're hearing,
Whose voice are we not hearing?
whose
And
voice are we
at the
not
table
hearing?
right now?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so now what do we do about that? What do we need to change so that we get their voice?
Yeah.
Not like,
How do we invite these people to come and sit at our table so that we can hear what they need?
or maybe we need to invite ourselves into
Their table.
into their table,
Yeah,
into
exactly.
their forum that they're comfortable with. So, and that's been the biggest, I think that's the learning experience, the thing that I don't think we're not done yet with that, with growing our community voice.
Yeah.
But starting from there, just seeing how we've utilized that and just continue to improve on that. that would be.
And to be honest, if you think about it as a bigger picture type of move, you then apply pressure onto other districts to follow that same model, because of the fact that they start to see, okay, well, how did that community bring in a superintendent so successfully, and they wrapped him up, and they appreciate him right away. Right. And it's because you can truly say, well, it's because we did this, and this, and
right.
this. And I was a part of that. I mean, I saw those interviews on Zoom
right.
while they were going on, and that was not an easy choice. No, but it was a very clear choice.
Yeah, when we came down to
it was a very clear choice. And
right.
so for us as a teacher, we knew, like, okay, and then now knowing too that we had 3 people out of the 5 that were in education. And really, you could talk about Sandra. She's been a part of education. She's at FCRC, so
right.
she's in schools as well.
Right.
So you think about 4 out of the 5 are strictly have been in education. We felt that we were in good hands as well, just because right. of what you guys brought to that table. So and you apply that pressure, and hopefully you make a little splash, and those ripples go all the way
right.
out. And that's hopefully something that you can also speak to in the future, even if they're not going to give you the credit.
Right, and I don't. Yeah,
down
I just
in Seattle, they say, well, this is how we do it now, or even of Othello or other parts of our state, this is how we do it now. Where do we see that first? Yeah. Right down here,
Yeah, right.
Good old Vancouver, And so
we're hoping. Yeah, we're hoping that. Learn by seeing.
Yes.
And then also, again, you see it. It seems to have worked. What's the research behind it? Why did that work?
Yep.
I wouldn't want anyone just to blindly copy us.
Yes.
I want them to see
the research and know their community. Every
right.
community is different
right.
and needs different things. And so, yeah, that's 100% a true statement. I appreciate that. And so that's going to take us to our last question. Saying that you've been here for 27 years, I kind of want to know for you in the next 10 years. Obviously, Vancouver's going to change.
Yes.
How do you know that you were successful on our board when you see what in the future? What are your goals? What are you like? I want this to happen so badly in Vancouver.
So there's one big thing that I would love to see, and this is like a pie in the sky dream, but I would love to see early childhood in our schools, really early childhood in our schools. And it's the only reason why I say it's a pie in the sky dream is because of funding, right? If we don't have the state supported funding, we don't have the ability to pay people, and it's becoming a crisis. Childcare is becoming a crisis. Not becoming. Childcare is a crisis. So if somehow we can blend, early learning in our schools and childcare, all of those things. I'm not saying that we provide childcare, because that is a whole other. That's a mess. I've done childcare before too, and that is a mess that I don't want to get into. But if you provide early learning, you kind of take a piece of the childcare out. And with so many of our families in crisis, it would be wonderful to have that early learning option for these families, because it's not just, I was just saying this the other day to somebody, one of the reasons why I love teaching the littlest is it's not just about the littles, who are amazing human beings, it's like watching research in front of brain research.
I have a little 1-year-old, and I know exactly what you're talking about.
It's like, oh my gosh, you just did that. That's like this. That's what I read about. But it's almost more so about helping the parents navigate what this is going to look like. How, if I haven't learned how to do early literacy with my kid, by reading. Why is that important? Everybody says it's important, but I can't find something, so how to navigate those things that will help those kids, and will help the family in the end. Help them, our FCRCs are so important because they help parents figure out how to be better parents. Not only that, but they help parents figure out maybe even how to find medical care, or how to, how to feed their kids.
Or taking away the stresses so that they can be parents.
Right, exactly. And I think if we can do it even earlier, then my hope would be that we would see parents, young parents or parents that are in crisis, the first thing they think about is coming to our schools.
Yeah.
Like, they come to our school and say, I'm having trouble doing this with my kids. What can you, and then we become like the disseminator of information or the finding of, because in the end, we're in every community, right? We're the center of every community.
Yeah.
And if that's what we become, then I'm like, okay.
Then we're set.
Then
I can hang them up. We're good to go.
Right. And all of back to research, all the research shows that the more you put forward at the beginning, the better off they are in the end. Not just our kids, again, the whole family, right? Everybody.
And then you think about the effects that would create with their families, right? Now that they've had this education and they know the rights and the wrongs, they know, routines and reading at a young age, then that's what hopefully they're going to do with their children, and then their children are going to have a better future for their next children. And so it just goes on generation to generation. I want to one-up you, and I'm going to hope that we also do early child, if we can, and then also add that multilingual option for them as well. Like,
totally.
That, to me,
I was already asking for a pie in the sky, now you're...
Hey, you might as well reach for a little bit higher. But because that's for me as well. It's like right now we're raising our daughter, and being bilingual, I know the benefits that will come to her, and I know that it's not just economically, but like just being able to communicate with their grandparents in their language, and also thinking about the idea of what that does to their brain. It's just a fantastic. So I am all on that pie in the sky goal, and if we can just put a cherry on the top and add some multilingual work
well,
to
if we're adding things, we have to also add music.
Okay.
Because talk about what it does to your brain.
100%.
The neuroscience behind music in a classroom.
And that helps
And it's
too.
not just the half an hour of music that they go to.
No.
It's like
embedded into your instruction,
exactly.
100%, and that's a good way to teach another language as well.
Yes, exactly.
So it's that. All right, well, Kathy,
I think you and I should just get together.
We'll run the world. It's fine. It's fine. I'll have to resign and go for the board as well. No. But I don't want to kick anyone out. Is my problem.
We're good. We're good.
If you want to add me on, I'll be a sixth man. All right. It's been a very, very fun interview with you, Kathy, and I hope that our community gets to see you and understands that you might be up on that podium and you might be serious in those meetings, but you're
I'm approachable, and
you're here for us. That's what I want to hear.
I'm trying.
Yeah. Thank you so much. All right, everyone. Well, that will wrap up our series. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have a good rest of your day. Take it easy.
You.
Bye.